everyone. My name is Dr. Valerie Meyer-Spiridolosi, and I teach Industrial and Systems Engineering here at the University of Rhode Island. The Yukon URI Navy STEM Coalition works with the National Institute for Undersea Vehicle Technology and our partners throughout the region who build submarines and support the U.S. defense industries. Come take a look what we're doing.
Hi everyone, my name is Riley Secor and I'm a graduate student here at the University of Rhode Island's Graduate School of Oceanography. My research here at URI focuses on the American lobster. I would love to show you some of the friends that I have here in the aquarium facilities. Come on. Welcome to the Ann Gall Durbin Aquarium facilities. Here we study all different types of organisms and sea creatures. What types of organisms have you been studying, and what kind of functions do they have? Those are all really cool features of animals. Do you mind if I show you some of the special features on my lobsters? I have two lobsters here. Even though both of these lobsters are the same species, the American lobster, Omaris americanus is its scientific name, they do look very, very different. And how a lobster looks and how it acts has a lot to do with the environment that it was raised in. So what are some of the differences that you notice between these two lobsters here? One of them is brown and one of them is blue. So you might have heard that blue lobsters are rare, and that is true. The reason that this lobster is blue is a little bit different. So this lobster came from the wild, and this lobster was raised up in this aquarium facilities. In the wild, the lobsters are eating whatever they can get their claws on. And in that, there's a lot of plant material falling from the surface. But here in captivity, I only feed the lobsters whitefish, but all of those foods, they lack pigment. The captivity lobsters don't have that pigment to build up in their shells, and they end up looking this blue. So today I'm going to show you how to tell the difference between a male lobster and a female lobster. You can't necessarily tell just from looking at them from above. What we have to do is flip the lobster over, and these things right here under a lobster's tail, those are called swimmerets or pleopods. And if you look at the very, very top set of pleopods, like up here, on a female, they're going to be soft and feathery, kind of like the rest of these ones. If you look at a male, that top set of pleopods is going to be more hard and bony, and it'll come to like a V shape rather than a crisscross shape like you would see on the females. Female lobsters have wide tails because they want to be able to carry as many eggs as possible. So the way that lobsters reproduce is that the female will carry the eggs under her tail for about 9 months, so the length of a human pregnancy. And then in the springtime, when the water starts to warm up, the female lobster will beat her tail, and all the little baby lobsters will kind of go off into the water where they will become plankton, which means that they're not able to swim or move for themselves. They can only go where the water currents are taking them. One advantage to carrying your eggs under your tail is that the female lobster is better able to protect them and keep them safe. She has kind of lobster glue that sticks them all together and keeps them nice and tucked up in her tail. And then for those 9 months, she can keep them oxygenated and keep them guarded so that they're protected from things like predators. And most of the time, as the female lobster is walking around, because she carries the eggs on the underside of her tail, they're going to be protected from predators from above and nice and secure with the mother lobster. Think about your most prized possession. If you were to transport that, you would want to make sure it was safe, right? So what could you design that would keep your most prized possession safe as you traveled with it? In addition to differences in gender, one key difference that we see between these lobsters is their claws. So this lobster here was taken from the wild and has two different types of claws. A slicer claw, and then we have a crusher claw. The slicer tends to be a little bit thinner, whereas the crusher is a lot more wide. A lobster would use its slicer claw to tear apart soft things like fish that fall to the bottom of the ocean, and it would use its crusher claw to break open things like crab shells and clam shells so that it could have the dinner that's inside. You can see that on the crusher claw, the lobster has these very hard, white, calcified structures. And if you look closely, they kind of look like human teeth if you ask me. However, you'll notice that the lobster that was raised up in this aquarium facility doesn't seem to have a crusher claw. It only seems to have 2 slicer claws. You're not getting those big chunks like you would on a wild claw. Why do you think that a lobster raised in captivity would have 2 slicers, but a wild lobster would have a slicer and a crusher? This is because as a lobster grows up in the wild and it's eating food, it becomes left clawed or right clawed. As the lobster is moving through its environment and eating, one of its claws turns into the dominant claw, and that becomes the crusher. On a lobster that was raised up, they have never had to look for their own food. They've never had to hunt, right? They just sit in the water, and then along comes a human and feeds them a nice little meal. So they have never had any reason to develop that crusher claw. How would you take inspiration from this lobster? Thanks for hanging out here at the aquarium today with the lobsters. I hope you enjoyed learning about all the different structures and functions that help the lobsters survive in their natural habitat. If you're interested in aquatic life and other sea creatures, I hope to see you here one day at the URI Bay campus.